With how chaotic the gaming industry can be nowadays, you start to think you've seen it all. But then a story comes along that leaves you scratching your head, wondering if you've ever witnessed anything quite like this before. And today we'll be discussing one such story, with a game publicly unlaunching itself and going back into beta. Yes, you heard me right. It was announced that Splitgate 2 from 1047 Games, released on June 6, 2025, would be reverting back to beta as they work to rebuild major parts of the game. This announcement is yet another major setback throughout the bizarre history of Splitgate, and one that has left me baffled at how it all went so wrong. This is the story of Splitgate 2, and this is the story of how not to save a game. For the uninitiated, Splitgate 2 is a sequel to its surprise smash hit predecessor that took the internet by storm in 2021. Splitgate was inspired by the Portal games, with its creator Ian Prue wondering whether the titular gameplay mechanic could work well in other genres. Ian was also a big fan of FPS games, specifically Call of Duty and Halo, so naturally he decided to combine them. Thus, Wormhole Wars was born. As you may expect, the game was extremely simple and basic early on, but the concept was strong. Ian found him and his friends were playing the game for hours, even in this very bare bones state. As development continued, the game began to resemble more of the final product, receiving some positive press in 2018. Its futuristic arcade shooter gameplay combined with the portal mechanic was unique, and offered a new layer that had not yet been explored to a genre that can often feel very stagnant. In 2019, the name was thankfully changed to the much better title Splitgate, and was released on Steam Early Access. But it wasn't until 2 years later that things really got going. In 2021, Splitgate entered open beta, which came alongside a console release to PlayStation and Xbox. Soon after this, the game suddenly blew up, becoming a social media phenomenon overnight. It felt like everywhere you looked, people were talking about this new Halo with Portals game. Influencers praised Splitgate, touting it as the next big thing. And just like that, hundreds of thousands of players flooded the servers, excited to try Ian's new take on this classic genre. Unfortunately, this is where the problems began. 1047 was a tiny indie studio, one that had no real experience or resources to work with. They did not have the infrastructure to handle this many players at one time, leading to constant server crashes, long login queue times, and other various issues. The team simply could not keep up with all of those who wanted to play the game, which is certainly a great problem to have, but it's still a major problem all the same. The good news though was that those who could get into the game were loving it. Not only was Splitgate a fresh take on the genre, but it was a fresh take on a genre that had been neglected for far too long. Arena shooters used to be all the rage, with games like Quake and Unreal Tournament dominating the FPS genre. Eventually, Halo and Call of Duty took the mantle and became some of the most played video games in the world. But as the years went on, arena shooters were becoming more of a rarity. Many of the big new multiplayer shooters being released were now battle royales or hero shooters. With both Halo and Call of Duty steadily declining in quality, arena shooter fans were desperate for something to remind them of the good old days. Splitgate's gunplay and map layout offered that to them, while the Portals were able to draw in new age players who expected more added complexities. 1047 Games had pulled off the impossible, and launched a massively popular game despite their small size. However, in today's gaming industry, that's not enough. In order to be considered a true success, at least in the multiplayer genre, you need long-term stability. Splitgate got people in the door, but now the tough part was going to begin. They would need to find a way to keep people playing. They started off strong in August 2021 with the Season 0 update. This brought new maps, weapons, and game modes alongside a battle pass and quality of life updates. It was pretty much everything you could have realistically asked for, but new content slowed down almost immediately, with the next major seasonal update not coming until January 2022. In the months that passed between these seasons, Splitgate had lost a large percentage of their player base, unable to keep the momentum going. With the way live service multiplayer games are now, people expect a constantly rotating carousel of new updates and things to do. With Splitgate coming from such a small development studio, they struggled to keep up with this expectation, especially alongside the necessary game stability updates updates, and the business dealings of a rapidly expanding company. It felt like no matter what they chose to focus on, something else would fall to the wayside. They could put all their effort into new seasonal content, but that would leave no time to fix up the game's many bugs. They could commit to improving stability, but then players would complain that there was nothing new. It was a pretty unwinnable situation. So they made a radical move, announcing in September 2022 that the next update for Splitgate would be its last, with the development team shifting focus to a new game in the Splitgate universe. It was a shocking announcement to see a game with so much hype and promise just 12 months prior already being abandoned. But in a lot of ways, it also made total sense. The reality is, Splitgate was created by college students on a budget, and it was never meant to reach these heights so quickly. The harder they tried to mold it into something it wasn't, the more problems seemed to be coming up. Instead of bashing their heads against the wall trying to make it work, it was smarter to take the money they had made and invest it into something new. They could build this new game from the ground up on the most up-to-date engine, have content updates prepared in advance instead of playing catch-up, and have a much larger team working to support the game from day one. It was no doubt a big risk, because trying to get that lightning in a bottle level of viral success again is never guaranteed, but I do feel this was the only way forward. So with that, development of the next Splitgate was now underway. As 1047 got to work on this next game, things looked a whole lot different. The initial team working on Splitgate 1 was about 15 people. By 2024, they had ballooned to around 160, drawing in many industry veterans with years of experience in the FPS genre. Their budget had skyrocketed, backed by the money from Splitgate 1 and several multi-million-dollar investments. This gave them a really exciting opportunity to reinvent what Splitgate could be. Instead of trying to work with a game that had been strung together by a couple college kids, they were now in a position to create a true AAA experience. While this was very good news, it also left their direction a bit up in the air. They felt it wouldn't be enough to just make a more polished Splitgate 1, they would need to go further. Ian told PC Gamer they considered a variety of options, including making Splitgate 2 a hero shooter, a COD clone, class-based, or just sticking by the original Halo-style vision. In the end, it became a combination of it all. There would be 3 different classes, each with a particular playstyle built around a central idea and inspiration. At the same time, maps were reworked to be less circular and more of a 3-lane design, similar to what you normally see from a Call of Duty game. The hope was that this would cut down on the feeling of not knowing where you got shot from, a common complaint that came from Splitgate's maps and their portal mechanic. It all sounded really promising, and the footage they were showing leading up to launch looked pretty good too. Part of me did worry about this new direction though. I think it was unavoidable that Splitgate would need to evolve and change, but it scared me to hear their marketing beats centered around so many things we have seen in other games. How many titles have we seen come out and get described as popular game name combined with other popular game name? It's easy to say, hey, let's combine Call of Duty, Halo, Overwatch, and Valorant. People love all those games, so they'll surely love this one. But as we've seen time and time again, it doesn't always work out that way. Taking inspiration from top games on the market makes sense, but if you aren't going to offer something demonstrably better or new, what incentive do we have to play your game instead of the ones you are taking notes from? Despite this concern, I kept an open mind as we got closer to Splitgate 2's first public gameplay event. On February 27, 2025, Splitgate 2 began their open alpha test and gave fans the chance to try out this new era for the first time. While impressions were pretty positive, some cracks were starting to show. Many hardcore fans of Splitgate 1 were not thrilled with this new direction, noting part of the reason they loved the original was because it avoided such common tropes like character classes and hero abilities. Some felt the game was trying to do too much and getting confused along the way. It was a weird combination that didn't really work and already had players asking for a Splitgate classic playlist when we were barely even past the first open alpha weekend. But hey, these complaints are what an alpha is for, and they would have time to address these concerns. In May 2025, the game went into open beta and continued on its path to launch. Unfortunately, the open beta was filled with constant server issues, broken progression, and general instability. The decision to move away from Splitgate 1 and focus on this new game was meant to alleviate these very problems. This was supposed to be a level up moment, a chance to show how much this team and game had grown. But it was looking more like nothing had changed after all. I know that might not be totally fair to say, especially because it was still in beta, but it's all about perception. And right now, the perception was that we were right back where we started. I don't want to oversell it because fans of Splitgate were still enjoying it for the most part, but the open beta was a big miss in their attempt to attract new players and prove their so-called AAA identity. But there was still another chance. The game had its full launch coming very soon, and it would be coinciding with one of the biggest gaming showcases of the year. A major moment came for Splitgate 2 at Summer Games Fest 2025, with 1047 promising a huge announcement. The community could not wait to hear what was coming, with fans theorizing about the various possibilities. A popular guess was a potential campaign, but the official Splitgate Twitter account told fans to think even bigger. When it was finally Splitgate 2's turn at the show, Ian took the stage and came out swinging. Sporting a Make FPS Great Again hat, he called out Halo, Call of Duty, and EA. He laid out his vision for how Splitgate 2 is going to take things to the next level and be everything that FPS games no longer were. How were they going to do this? How were they going to save the FPS genre and give you what those big bad AAA developers won't give you? With a Battle Royale mode, of course. Now, enjoy this trailer with Imagine Dragons background music. Please clap. Needless to say, this showing at Summer Games Fest didn't go over very well for a myriad of reasons. Part of it was for the hat and its political ties, but in order to avoid a comment war, let's not even get into that. Because regardless of your own personal political leanings, an overused MAGA parody joke is not even close to the biggest problem here. Let's remove the presidential association and focus on the actual words themselves. Make FPS great again. It's a bold statement, one that promises to take us back to our favorite gaming memories. The worldwide hype of Halo 3's launch, or the countless hours spent playing prime Call of Duty games on Xbox Live. That is what the audience envisions when you tell us you're going to make FPS great again. Instead, you gave us yet another Battle Royale, which I would argue is the very antithesis of what Splitgate was ever supposed to be. Splitgate was meant to be a return to the old school arena shooter genre, a style that once seemed lost to time. And the big irony here is that Battle Royales are the very thing that pushed arena shooters to the curb. Ever since PUBG and Fortnite took over the world, every company has been chasing that high, making Battle Royales their primary focus. This obsession has led to less arena shooters being made, and even the ones we do have feeling like an afterthought. For example, Ian called out Titanfall by name, claiming he wishes we could get Titanfall 3, which is a very relatable sentiment. But one of the big reasons why we don't have Titanfall 3 is because Respawn found more success with Apex Legends, the Battle Royale spin-off that would go on to supersede the entire series. To claim you are trying to make FPS great again, and then follow down the very same path that many would argue tanked the whole genre in the first place, is just embarrassing. The entire appearance was tone deaf and made it seem like the developers had no idea what Splitgate even was or why people liked it in the first place. Splitgate 2 had a chance to go against the trend and carve its own path. Instead, they willingly joined the long list of games in one of the most saturated genres we have. Speaking of making FPS great again, one of the other things that came alongside the Battle Royale movement was the focus on microtransactions. It's an annoyance that many of us have come to accept, especially with a free-to-play game. It's to be expected that Splitgate 2 would have similar cosmetic purchases, but they seem to be taking things to the next level. Fans noticed an item bundle that cost a whopping $80, discounted from a supposed price of $140. Wildly expensive microtransactions with pricing like this is a practice that began with modern-day live service multiplayer games, aka the very thing that Ian claimed they were trying to make great again. It's extremely hypocritical to market yourself as the relatable pro-consumer indie company and then turn to the same exact business practices of the games you're calling out. You're putting a target on your head by doing this and practically begging for criticism criticism. And boy, the criticism sure did come. Most of it was centered around the hat, yes, but a lot of it was also genuine disappointment in their announcement, trailer, and current state of the game. Ian put out a video on Twitter addressing the situation, explaining the hat was not meant to be a political statement, but rather a way to draw attention to themselves during a very crowded showcase. And while he stood by it for that intended purpose, he also saw how divided it made the community, and for that reason chose to apologize. Regardless of how you feel about the hat, it's undeniable that it caused division, anger, and toxicity to surround Splitgate 2. You don't want those kinds of words hovering around your game and community, especially when you are trying to draw in new players and win people back after failing to support Splitgate 1. Ian's strategy of drawing more attention to the game worked, but it quickly became clear Splitgate 2 was not ready for the limelight. Instead of impressing people, it put a magnifying glass on all of its biggest flaws. Ian put out another Twitter video addressing the concerns about the game itself, stating many microtransaction prices would be reduced. Those who had purchased at the higher price point would get a refund. Meanwhile, he assured fans that the Battle Royale mode was not going to hinder their arena identity. He used the word additive, claiming the Battle Royale mode was simply another layer to the game, and it wasn't going to be replacing anything. While that's certainly a nice spin on things, it's simply not true. The time, money, and resources that went into creating the Battle Royale mode could have been spent bettering the arena experience. This is a game and studio that has often struggled to keep up with meaningful update deadlines and player expectations, so I fail to see how adding another whole game mode on top of that is not going to be detrimental to the core experience. Despite 1047's quick responses, a lot of the damage was already done. Splitgate 2's appearance at Summer Games Fest was supposed to be an eye-catching, exciting celebration of their new game, but in the end, they upset their community, turned a lot of people against the game despite never even playing it, and put a giant spotlight on everything currently wrong with Splitgate 2. It was the last thing this game needed, and seemed to speed up an outcome that many would say was inevitable. Despite all of the controversies and criticisms, Splitgate 2 got off to a decent start when it officially launched on June 6, 2025. The Splitgate Twitter account claimed player count had tripled since beta, but at no point did Splitgate 2 seem to have the same cultural impact as the first. No one was really talking about it other than those who had been paid to do so. You've probably seen the story going around that 1047 spent around $400,000 sponsoring streamers to play the game. And yeah, I totally believe that number. They had many of the top streamers on Twitch playing this game for multiple streams. Those kinds of hours do not come cheap. Many are dunking on this and saying the money should have been used to improve the game instead. I don't know if it's a super fair criticism because that money was most likely part of their already predetermined marketing budget. It's not like they were directly taking funds away from development. But I do think it's fair to say this was a wasted endeavor. It's obvious they were trying to recreate what happened with Splitgate 1, where all of the influencers talked about how great it was and got everyone to give it a try. But the thing is, that phenomenon happened naturally. Influencers were recommending Splitgate because they actually enjoyed it, not because they were paid to do so. And the problem is, even if the streamer in question genuinely does like Splitgate 2, the second you see that hashtag ad in the title, their opinion is kind of invalidated. It doesn't matter how much money you spend, you cannot manufacture virality. It just comes across as fake and disingenuous. It felt to me like they gave Splitgate 2 no real chance to thrive on its own or garner a legitimate following. They immediately paid off half of Twitch to play it, which made all of the impressions seem hollow. When combined with Splitgate 2's questionable identity of its own, or lack thereof, everything around the game just felt super artificial. Despite their many desperate attempts to reclaim the internet's attention, Splitgate 2 very quickly began to bleed players. G Infinity Esports reported the game had lost 96% of its players just 1 month after its official launch. Splitgate 2 had failed, and for the second time, 1047 would have to make an incredibly tough call. On July 22nd, 2025, it was announced that Splitgate 2 would essentially be unreleased and pushed back into beta as they address the many concerns and problems. The statement claims the game will be back in beta until early next year, with their main focuses being progression, monetization, and classic game modes. An unfortunate side effect is that the original Splitgate will now be shut down to save money on server costs and hopefully keep as many jobs as possible within 1047. 1047. The pessimist in me could argue the shutdown of Splitgate 1 is actually meant to force stubborn fans to make the switch, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Either way, it's a devastating announcement for the Splitgate community, one that feels like they need to start all over again. Splitgate 2 was supposed to be the answer, the final culmination of Splitgate's initial potential, but now it feels like the community missed out on years of potential Splitgate 1 updates just to end up right back in the same situation all over again. Now, so far, the games I've covered in this series have all had definitive endings, but when it comes to Splitgate 2, the story is not yet finished, with another relaunch coming soon. However, I felt comfortable making this video now because based on what we've seen so far, I'm pretty confident saying this story is not going to have a happy ending. Throughout life, you only get given so many chances. There is only so much goodwill you can burn before people grow tired of you. And in the gaming industry, this holds true as well. There are so many games being released every single day, fighting for our attention and money. Most games only get one chance to make a good first impression, and if they fail to do so, they fade into obscurity. A select few games are lucky and get a second chance at life, and they're able to make the most of it. But for Splitgate 2 and 1047 games, this will be their third chance. And actually, it's more like their fourth if you count the 2019 early access release of Splitgate 1. At what point does it come time to accept that this just isn't working? You've tried updating the engine, you've tried adding new modern gameplay mechanics, you even tried making a battle royale mode, and none of it was enough. It seems to me that there is simply a fatal flaw here, and one that cannot realistically be overcome. And that fatal flaw is the portals. The portals are extremely troublesome for player engagement. In fact, the developers have pretty much admitted this. They found it was extremely difficult to onboard new players into Splitgate because they would log into a match with experienced players and have no idea what in the world was going on since everyone was portaling around all over the place. It's the core issue that Splitgate has never been able to overcome. They have not found a way to make this a game that works well for both casual and competitive players. And to be fair, this is probably the most common problem that multiplayer games face. It's an extremely hard thing to balance, and one that often causes a lot of rifts within communities. When it comes to Splitgate, it's even harder than normal, because a match of brand new players and a match of highly competitive players may as well be entirely different games. That's why it's been so difficult to attract new players and keep them playing Splitgate past that first wave of hype. The portal mechanic is simply too daunting for your average consumer. And as much as the top 1% of competitive players love to think they speak for the entire player base, the reality is they are the extreme minority. Any game that wants to have a chance of long-term success needs to cater to casual players just as much, if not even more. But Splitgate really struggles to do so because its core feature is so complex. And removing portals certainly isn't the answer either, because without portals, Splitgate is nothing. It's just a mishmash of ideas from every other shooter you've already played before. So you're stuck. Either you go all in on portals and alienate casual players, or you move away from them and lose your identity entirely. So the way I see it right now is that 1047 games can go back to the drawing board as many times as they can afford. They can call it a beta or an alpha or a full release or whatever else. They can add a battle royale mode and wear as many controversial hats as they want. But if they cannot figure out this core issue, the result is going to be the same every single time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of How Not to Save a Game. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. Do you agree with my conclusion that Splitgate can't work, or do you think 1047 can find a solution this time around? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.